Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get the stream up and running, and then we can start. All right. You should be able to see my live stream now. Can everybody see and hear me? Can you just send a yes? Okay, thank you. Just a yes in the chat. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Okay, let us get right into it. Right, so today we'll be doing some more useful functions, and we'll be looking at other features of Python, as well as doing some more practice for the Olympiad. Okay, so your homework, I gave you 2 questions from the 2019 round 1 Python Programming Olympiad. So your first question was to write a program that print the nth prime number. Okay, so for prime numbers, I wanted you to, for example, if you said what is the 3rd prime number, it should tell you it is 5. Or if you input the 10th prime number, it should tell you 29. Right, did you get that working? Is there anybody that wants to share their code? Did you find it easy? Was it difficult? Right, Keen, let's see what he did. So, Keen, let me just quickly start. Let me just quickly ask, how was it for you? Was it a difficult question, or did you find it easy? Let's see. So you start with the input, right? Then you created your own function. Nice. Right, so you created a list with number 2 being the first element. All right, then you gave a number 3. Then while your list, the length of your list is smaller than n, then for every element in the list, you check if, okay, so you use the modulus. This is very good. So then you check if that number is dividable, and you get a number with no remainder, then it is not a prime. Otherwise, you add that number to your list. All right, very good, very good. Yeah, quite a challenge. Yes, yes. That's a good solution. So let me show you mine. Okay, so I created 2 functions. So the first one is just to check if it is a prime, and the second one was to check the amount of primes. So very easy. So we start at the number 2. We know 2 is a prime number. So if the number is smaller than 2, then it is automatically not a prime number. All right. Anything negative or 1 does not count as prime number. So we start with I in range starting at 2, going up until n. All right. So we will use n in our second function. So then I did the same as Keen, where I checked the number n. If it is if I divide it by I and I get a 0 for a remainder, then it means that number is divisible by something else. So it is not a prime number. So I return false and I break. Otherwise, it is a prime number. So then for my second function that I wrote, I created an empty list. I started with a 2. And then while my list, the length of my list is smaller than the number we inputted. For example, if we want the 10th prime, so while the length is smaller than 10, for example, then I run my first is prime.
Then I run my first is function.
Someone.
Sorry,
can you please
mute your microphone? I hear an echo.
You can right click.
You'll see that here at the bottom there is a mute.
If you look on
my screen, there is a mute button
that you can click. All right, thank you. Great, let's continue. Okay, so then I add my prime number if it should return true. Then I append my prime number, Yeah, I actually see a mistake in my code. This is unnecessary of me to write equals true. I created this program a bit late at night, so I was slightly tired. So this is unnecessary to add, as we've spoken about in the past. You can only check since our function returns either true or false. It is not necessary to equal it to true to check if it is equal to true or false. All right. But anyway, so if this returns true, it means the number is a prime number. Then we add that number to our list of prime numbers, and we add 1 to j, and then based on that we get the nth prime number. Is something wrong with the stream? Oh no, for a second there was just an echo with one of the students having a mic unmuted. But it should be good now. Alright, so that was our first solution. The second one. So for the second one, this one was a bit more complicated. So a digit word is a word where after possibly removing some letters, you are left with one of the single digits. So for example, if you look at the word bounce, bounce has a O, an N, and an E in. So then we get the word 1 inside the word bounce. For the word sphinx, we have an S, an I, and an X. So then we get the word 6. For founder, we once again have an O, N, and E, also equating 1. So I wanted you to create a program that can check if there is a number in a word. If you can spell one of the numbers from 1 to 9. Okay, did you get that working? Is there anybody who got question 3 to work that wants to share their code? This was a bit of a difficult one. We'll run through my solution now. I just want to see if someone wants to share. I tried really hard, but I could not get it. Okay, that is no problem. My solutions will be posted, and then you can break my solution down and try and see what happens step by step. But I'll show you how to do that now. And then you can try it on your own as well. Okay, so I see a few students typing. So let us go to the second solution. Okay, I couldn't work that one out. Right, let me show you what I did. Okay. I also struggled a bit with this one, so not to worry. It was a bit difficult. So in PyCharm, you'll see if you click in this side here, on the side, you can add a breakpoint. So there I add a red dot. So what that means is I can pause the code, and I can go through it step by step, and we can see at each step what happens. Okay, so I write a function to check if my word that I entered, if a number is contained within the word I entered. So the first thing I did was I created a list with all of the number words. So a list with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Now I want to check, is this word contained within the word I entered? All right. So we can start. Let's slowly run through this program. So instead of clicking on run, I'm going to click on debug. So now we can see what happens. So I'm going to test the word bounce. All right. So I enter that. Now you'll see my program pauses. Okay. So you'll see so my program paused here. So the moment this function was called. Okay, so where is this function called? So here's my main input. So this runs first. So the first line that actually runs is my list gets created. Then it skips this function. It doesn't look at this function yet. Then I enter my own word. So I entered the word bounce. I assigned it to W for word. Okay, so for every character in my word, I will check if that character is contained in the word. So I run my function now. So here is the first time that my function is called. So this function returns a bool, so either true or false. So now let's look at how my function works. So now we create a variable called position, and we assign 0 to it. Alright, now let's see what happens. I step down. Now you'll see here is a blue arrow pointing down saying step into my code. So now I can do my code step by step. So every time I click, you'll see this blue line will move on down. This is where we currently are in the code. And then here you'll see all my variables that is currently assigned. So we have S, that is we start at the first item in our word list, so that is 1. Then we have W, which is my variable for my word that I entered. So W is currently assigned bounce, and S is currently at 1. So first we check the first item in our list. Okay, so now I see if that character is equal to the position. So we start at position 1 in S. So S is 1. So if the first character is equal to that position, let's see if that is true. So for the first case, let's see what happens. So B, is B equal to the first character in S? So is B equal to O? It is not. So then we try again. So the second letter in bounce is O. So this should return true now. Yes, so now we can move the position 1 further. All right. Now we check if the position is equal to the length of S, S being our number word. So this is not true. Then we do that again. So now we check the third letter. The third letter in the word bounce. We check U. You'll see also here in light gray, PyCharm, our IDE, our environment, tells us what the variables are currently assigned. So you'll see here we have the variable S and W, and now in light gray it tells us what this variable is currently assigned. You'll see that in every line for every variable we can see what it is currently assigned. So now position, it started at 0. It is currently 1 because we added 1 in one of our previous steps. The current C is the letter U, not W, sorry. And then so we can run through our code one letter at a time. And you see there the position is now 3. The position should now be equal to the first length. So now the position being 3, because we add to our position every time we find a match between our word and the first and the item in our list. So then we add a number to our position. And now because the position integer is equal to the length of our first item, it gets returned true. And then we print S. Right. So that is how we check. So if I run this program quickly, I can type in the word bounce, and I get 1 as a number word. Let's try another one. Let's do Sphinx. Then we get 6. Okay, so what I want you to do after class is type this program. I'll actually copy this program. Let me copy this entire program for you, and I will paste it in the chat. Run this program in your own PyCharm project and use the debugger as I just showed you. Put in a breakpoint. You can put in a breakpoint anyway. We can put in a breakpoint right here at the start. Right click and then debug. And now you can see how it works for every single line. So now we can start with the word bounce. Whoops, what? I did something wrong now. Bounce is not defined. Let's start just one lower. So let's debug this program again. Type in the word bounce. And now you can go step by step through the whole program to try and understand what every line does. And look at the variables at the bottom to see how the variables change as the program runs. Alright, so I want you to try and make sense of this program on your own after class as well. This was a bit of a more difficult one, but I hope this makes somewhat sense. There are comments here, so you know what, so you can see where the main input starts and the purpose of this function. Right. We'll be doing some more Olympiad practice today at the end of the class. And then I think next week or the week thereafter we can do a session where you can bring all your questions, especially with programs where you struggled like this one, and then we can run through them again and do them again. Alright, then we can do them together. But let us get started. Okay, so today we'll be looking at slicing, which is also a nice little feature of Python. So slicing is a way of taking a range of elements from a collection. So you remember a collection, it can be anything. It can be a list, a tuple, a set, a dictionary that we looked at. Can even be a string. A string is a collection of characters. Okay, so starting and ending at user-defined indices. So an indice, if you remember, let me quickly just create a new program. Let's just make a new class program. So if I make a string and I call it, let's just call it my string, and I give it something silly, saying, let's make it this is my string, then you'll remember an index. If we want to print this and we want to print, let's say, the letter T, then the index will be in the square brackets, and we will say the letter T starts at index 0 because we start counting at 0 for programming. So when I print this, I'll get the letter T. But now we go a step further. So we can slice through any sequential data type. So a string is also a sequential data type because it is a sequential list of characters. But we can also slice through a list, a tuple, and so forth. Okay, so let's create a string. So this is our string now. This is a string we can slice. Let's actually do it the same. Let's do it the same as in my example. This is a string we can slice. So we keep it exactly the same. Okay, so now we specify a slice as follows. So instead of just inputting an index, so you'll remember the index is just the number in square brackets. Now you can specify a start and an end parameter. Okay, so it looks exactly the same. So you'll see if I use a colon now, then it means we start at index 0 and we can end, let's say we end at index 4. Okay, so now you'll see we printed THIS. So our output is only index 0 to index 4. So we start at 0 up until 4. If we go further and we say index 8, let's see what happens. Now this is, so we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we included the space there. If we say 7, then it still looks the same, but we do not include the space. Then we leave that space out. Alright, so that is how slicing works. So in this example we start at index 5, but we do not specify an end. So if we start at index 5 and we leave the second argument blank, we use the colon but we leave the argument blank, then it automatically assumes we want to print up until the end of our collection, so up until the end of our string. So here we start at index 5, so that means we skip THIS, we skip the blank, the space, and we start at the I. So you'll see in our output we have is a string we can slice. So that means we skip the first part and we start it later. Okay, and then we can take everything from the start and slice up until an ending. So if we only input an end and not a start, that means we start from the program assumes we will start from the beginning. So if we run this, then we get this is. But now I can start, let's start at 5, end at 7. Then we only get the word is, because it starts at index 5 and ends at index 7. So we only have these two. Right. And now we can add a third parameter, which acts as a step. So by default, the third parameter is 1. 1 meaning we run through every single character. So we go THIS. But now if we add a third parameter, for example 2, then now we only take every second item in so we will take TI space S A S R N space. So you'll see this is the output we get now. It doesn't make any sense, but this is now our result. We can even input a 3 there, and we'll only take every third character. So you'll notice I left the first 2 blank, but it is not necessary. If we leave an argument blank, then Python automatically inputs a default. So if we don't pass a start, so you'll see here a start is the first one. If we don't input a start, then it's considered 0, meaning we start at the beginning. If we don't input an end, it's considered the entire length. So if we leave the end, then it means it'll go up until the last character. And if we don't pass a step, which is the third parameter, it's considered to be 1. So we don't have to input these parameters. They can be left at their default. So we can, for example, start at, let's say, the 5th, and then we take 2 steps. So now you'll see we start at the 5th item in our string, so the 5th character. So we start at the I, and then we go I, skip 1 space A. Oh yes, oops, yeah, I skipped that one. I'm a bit confused now suddenly, sorry. Yes, okay. Oh, we input 2, yeah, we have 2 spaces, so we skip that in the second space, and then we go to the T, the I. Right, that's because we started at the 5th element in our list. So so if we leave that argument empty, then we have the result we had earlier. The step being defaulted to 1, the end being defaulted to the entire length of the string, and then starting at 5. So we do not have to add the arguments. We can leave them as a default. We can also pass negative numbers as arguments. Alright, so what do you expect our output to be? So let's do this. So I'm going to make the step -1. What do you expect our output to be now if we use a -1 step? Is there anybody that wants to take a chance? What's going to happen? You can look at the code. So here's our string. This is a string we can slice, and we use a -1 step. What will our output be? Reverse of the string. Let us see. There you go. And our string is now reversed because we do a -1 step. Right. Let's use a -1 for an end. So now we take the entire string from the start. We go up until -1. What do you expect the output to be now? Look at our string. What is our output going to be if we have an end as -1? It is not going to be the same as normal. What is going to change? You are correct, but what is going to... It is not going to... So what is going to be different? What is the difference going to be from this string compared to a -1 end? It will not have the last character. Right, let's see. Yes, this is a string we can slice without the exclamation mark. So we go up so when we use a negative number, that means we go up until the end -1. So we now ignore the last character. So if we go -5, this is a string we can S. So we cut the entire last part out. And if we use a -1 as a start, what is going to happen now? Anybody that wants to take a chance? What will our output be now? Let's see if we quickly run this. Then we start at the end. So now we only have Just the first character. Very close, but not quite. Only the last character, because now we start at the end. So we take the entire string's length and we start at the last one. So if we start at -6, we will only get slice. So that is what happens when you use negative numbers. You can also use a negative 2-step. So then we take the string in reverse, but only every second character. Right, so that is slicing. You can do that with list items as well, tuples. You can use a slice the same way you would use an index on any iterable data type. That means string, list, dictionary, anything you can run through. Now we'll be looking at some functions. All right, we're just going to be going to do two functions today. The first one is a map function. The map one is actually quite fun. We'll be using it. We'll be using it in the Olympiad questions to make our program a bit shorter. Okay, so the map function executes a specific function on each item in an iterable. So an iterable, as we've already discussed, an iterable is anything you can run through. So a string is something you can iterate through. Let's take a look at a string. So an iterable means we can use, for example, a for. So I can say for I, so that means for every character in my string, we can print I, so that means the character. Let's make this easier to read. Let's say for every character in my string, we can print the character. Okay, it means the exact same thing as the I. This is just easier to understand. So when we run this, then we get every character gets printed on a separate line. So this is broken up is a string. So this means we can iterate through the string. So every character is now a separate item. So we can use the map function on any iterable. So that means we can use it on a list, on strings, on dictionaries, anything you can iterate through. So how it works is you use the function map, and then there should be two arguments. Your first argument will be the function you want to do, and the second argument is the thing you want to iterate through, the thing you want to execute every function on. Okay, so what do I mean? Let's create our own function to calculate the square of an integer. Okay, so we're going to create our own function now from scratch. You remember we spoke last time, so we're going to make a function. What did I call it? So calculate square. Okay, so here's the function I'm creating. And then you should input two numbers. So we're going to no, not two numbers is necessary. We can do it with one number. We just want the square. Sorry. So we do one number. We do n. So you can input your own n. That can be any number. And then you return n times n. So that is a square. It is the number times itself. Okay. So here's our very easy function. We just want to calculate the square. Okay, so let's test if this works. So we can calculate square, let's say the square of 4. And then I want to print this. You know what, let me print this function. So let us print the results of this function. So when we calculate the square of 4, we get 16. As expected, as 16 is the square as 4 times 4. Alright, so a very easy function. Now we want to create a list of numbers. Okay, so let us delete that. So let's create a list. Let's call them numbers. We create a list. Let's take the number 1, number 2, 3, and 4. Now we have a list with 4 numbers, 1 to 4. Okay, so now we want to perform this function we just created on every number in our list. So one way to do it, it is a bit long, so we can say for every num in numbers, we can say calculate, we can print calculate square and then the number. So let's see what happens. Then we get 1, 4, 9, 16. All right. So this is one way to do it. We can use a for loop to run through every number. We can also use a function. So this is where Python is a little bit more easy to use. Python has all these little functions to make our lives easier as we get to know them. So we want to run the function on every number in our tuple or list. Okay, so I created a list instead of a tuple. Let's create a tuple instead. As you remember, tuples are very similar to lists. The only difference being they use less memory and they cannot change once they are created. All right. So, okay, so instead of a list, I made a tuple. Okay, so now we want to run our function on every number in our tuple without using a loop. So now, let's create a new variable. Let's call it result. And what is result going to be? So we want to create a new tuple with all our numbers calculated to the square. Okay, so now we use the map function. So the map function, as I explained, it takes two arguments. So there's going to be argument 1 and argument 2. So what are they going to be? So the first argument is the function we want to perform. So we want to perform calculate square. Okay. And then we want, on what do we want to perform it? We want to perform it on numbers. Okay. So we can take this out because we want to do calculate square. Okay, so what that means is on every number in our tuple, we will perform this function. Okay, so we pass our custom function as the first argument to the map function. Okay, so this represents the function we want performed on every item in the tuple. And the second argument is the collection, is our collection. So our tuple, numbers, is our collection. In this example, it is this tuple we just created with the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so map returns a map object. Okay, so what happens now? Let's see, when I run this line of code, we do not get an output because we did not print anything. So if I just print my result, you'll see I get a map object. So this is a bit difficult to work with. So we don't know, we can't see the data in here. So we have to access the data in this now. Okay, so we can use a for loop. So let's use a for every item in result. We can print the item. Right, so you'll see we use the map function to perform a function on every item in our list. So you'll see the map function now exists of numbers 1, 4, 9, 16. So first it goes and says 1, and it performs our function on 1. So 1 times 1 is 1, then it takes 2, and it performs our function on 2, then we get 4, it takes 3, then it performs our function on 3, we get 9, it takes 4, and we get that performed, and we get 16. Okay, so that is how we use our map function. It seems a bit unnecessarily long to use it now, but it'll make sense when we do the Olympiad practice. You'll see how it can make life a bit easier when programming. Right. So that's a map function. We perform a function on every item in an iterable. Okay, next one. We're going to take a look at zip. Just a quick question, does everybody understand the map function so far? Do we have any questions? You understand how to use the map function and what the purpose of it is? You understand how to that you can input any function? Or, are there any questions about that? Okay, all right. I'm glad you understand. If I go too fast, please stop me. I am making a recording as well that will be uploaded to YouTube again, and we will have the Wednesday sessions. You can send an email to Mr. Wiem if you want to do sit in on the Wednesday session, where he will also be answering questions about the class we did today. Right, I see Christian is typing. So, okay, you understand map function, just don't understand the def, but still, okay. So, just a quick explanation again. So, let's take a look actually at that website I gave you last time. So, let's say Python W3 schools. I will quickly explain the def. I'll do a very brief explanation on that again. So you remember Python has functions, so we just use, let's say Python functions, Python built-in functions. So as we explained last time, Python has all sorts of functions, so we can use, what's one we use often? Here's an easy one actually. We can take sum. So Python has a built-in function for sum. So if we take, let's say, print, and then we print the sum, let's say 1 and 2. If I run this, this object is not iterable. It will be a list. So if we use our list, and let's create a, and we print the sum of numbers. Alright, so here is a built-in function of Python. Okay, so we have the built-in function called sum, and then it will add all the integers or numbers in a collection. So we have a tuple here with the numbers 1 and 2. We can even add more. Let's add, let's say the number 2, let's put in a 4 and an 8. So let's run this. Now we get 16 because 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 4 is 8, plus 8 is 16. Okay, so here's a function called sum. This is a built-in function, but using the def keyword, we can create our own function. Let's say our own sum. Now we can create anything. Now we can say it must input a list. Then let's say for I in list, we can say I plus, let's say I plus equals, we can, wait, sorry. Let's create a new number. Let's say num or result is 0. And then we can say result plus equals I. Okay, so what we do now is we input a list, and then we have a 0, we have a variable named result with a 0 assigned to it. And then for every item in our list, we will add that to our result. So this will give us the same output if I am correct. Let's see. So let us also print our, let's actually just do it quicker. Let's then print our result at the end once we are finished. So once we are finished, we will print result. So then I can also, now we can run our function, our own sum, and we add list. So let's see what happens. Oops, I have a problem. The type is not iterable in line 3. Okay, so list. We have to add numbers. Oops, I added the wrong one. Silly mistake there. Okay, now we get the same result. So the first one is the built-in function of Python with the sum function. The second one is our own function. So def only means we create our own function. So now if I want to use this function often, I don't have to write out this piece of code every single time or copy and paste it a few times. I can only call my function that I created here. So that is the purpose of the def keyword. So it's so we create our own function. It's the class, I think we did it last week, lesson 9. It is on YouTube, and the PowerPoints are also available. So you can take a look at that again if you do struggle a bit. Alright, so that is what I mean with we create our own function. Okay, so map is a built-in function as well as zip, the next one we'll be looking at. Okay, so zip takes two iterable, does it make a bit more sense now? Okay, so you understand we can create our own function using the def keyword. Right. Alright, cool. I am glad. So let's take a look at the other function called zip. So with zip, we take two iterables, and we pair them up. So if we make two lists, so we make a list A, and then we write the names John, Charles, and Mike. Now let's say we want to go dancing, and these are the men in the group, and then these are the women in the group, and they want to go dancing together. So we can pair them up. So A being John, Charles, and Mike, and B being Jenny, Christy, Monica, and Vicky. So we want to give every guy in the group a dance partner. Okay, so we want to pair the names up, so we use a zip function and pass both lists as arguments. So we have a list A and a list B. So A is the guys, B is the girls. So then we create a new list of X. X will be the pairs. So then we say zip, and we pass in list A and list B. So we pass in two separate items. So A being the men, B being the women, and we pair them up. So what happens now is Python goes and takes every item in the list and adds it to the second to the same numbered item in the second list. So it goes and it says John and pairs it with Jenny. It goes Charles with Christy, Mike with Monica. I'll explain what happens to Vicky now. So then we get a zip object. So let us see what happens. I did the zip. There you go. So let's first take this out. So if we only now print X, then the same as with map, you'll see you get a zip object. So we want to access the data on that zip object. So what we do is we convert this zip object to a list. So we create a new, let's actually make it a bit easier to understand. So let's say guys and girls, and then let's call this one partners. Okay, so then let's take the guys, the girls. Okay, so now we have our list called partners. Okay, so this is a zip object. So we want to convert this zip object. So let's now make a list of partners. So now we use the list function. The list function is very similar to you'll remember when we want to convert something to an integer, we said int and then our number. So if we so it's casting. We did casting a few lessons back, I think back in March or April. So this, what we're doing here is a cast. So we're casting the partners zip object to a list. And then we can print our list of partners. Okay. So what happens now is instead of getting the zip object, we get a list. So you'll see we get this pair of John and Jenny, Charles and Christy, and then Mike and Monica. So Vicky, she just got left behind. So you'll see the second list has an extra entry. So a zip object, it takes the shortest list, and that will be the length of the zip object. So all the extra items of the longer list gets thrown out. So we can add 7 more girls to this list, but because there are only 3 guys, the rest of them after Monica will all be excluded. So the shortest list determines the length of the zip object. Right, so that is how we use both the map and the zip object. So as a tip, you can use a map object in the practical you will be doing now. I will give you 10, let's say for 13 minutes, so we can look at the answer just before the end of the class. I'm setting my timer now. Are there any questions up until this point? Or are you ready to start with the practical practice? Ready? Okay, ready. If there's any questions, please do feel free to ask. And I'll set my timer and you can start. Read the question and then you can practice by inputting these numbers, and you should be getting this as an output. I will explain the solution after the time has passed. All right. And your time starts now. I will be by my computer, so I will hear any questions that pop up. You have about 5 minutes left. Right, I can share. I'll be going over the solution shortly. Give about 2 more minutes. Right, let's see what Kin did. Then for some reason it assigns minus 4,400 to D. Keen, can you copy your whole program? Let's take a quick look. A is equal to... Okay. So you have 3 separate inputs. That's bigger than 100. D is 0. Else D. Alright. So you said, okay, if 100 free minutes, then 80%, 80 cents per minute. So let's take a look. It assigns minus 4,400 to D. Yes. Yeah, I was curious now about the A being larger than. Alright. Does it work if you change your comparison? You can stop an if statement also by using a break. That is one way to stop an if. Let's see. Where did I use an if? Oh, an if here you can use a break line. Oops. Break. Why am I getting a error here now? Break outside the loop. Okay. So a break statement. Yes, please show me your code. Let's see. Okay. So All right, so you made a dictionary. Very interesting. Okay. So you want to stop your... I want to put a break at the if statement. Okay, so you want to stop if... Oh, okay, so you do not want this. You do not need this if then. You can swap the else if the first one, minus 8,000, minus 8,000 is smaller than 0, then nothing. Okay, you can use I want to put a break at the if statement. It won't work though. What is your error that you get? Let me quickly copy this code myself. Let's see. Okay, so you want to do a break there. Alright, so if I run this, then a break outside loop, that is curious. Keen, I'll take a look now after class and explain why the break won't work. Let me just do a bit of debugging myself. Alright, let me show you my solution, and then I'll assign the homework, and Keen, I will tell you in coding assistance how you can stop that break. I'm not sure exactly now why the break statement won't work. I've used it a few times. I must be missing something. I'll tell you now after class, then I'll take a quick look. Right, so let's take a look at my code. So here is my solution, my entire solution in 3 lines. Where did I do this? Alright, so you'll see if I run mine, I can enter 3 values. So let's test the values 45, 0, and 1. So let's start with the first one. So I can test 45, 0, 1. Then I get the result of 50 cents. Okay, so how did I do it so short? So I created a string, alright, that I cast a list. So let's actually start from the inside and work our way out. Okay, so first I take the input, okay. So I can input any number. So I can input 45 space 0 space 1. Okay. So now I want to split this into a list. Okay. So how do I split this into a list? So I use the split keyword. So the split function takes a string and it splits it. You can give it. You can say, for example, comma or whatever, but if you do not give it an argument, then it by default splits at the space, at the first blank character. So for every space, it'll assign a new item to a list. Okay, so we take an input and we split at the spaces. All right. So that is what we did there. But now I want these numbers to be an int. So here's how the map function comes into play. So I use the map function. So you'll remember with the map, we input 2 arguments. So our first argument is the function we want to be performed, and our second argument is the iterable we want to be performed. So we have a string that we can iterate through. So it turns it into a list at the spaces. So now we cast every item to an int. So this is how we use the map. So this is a very easy way to create a list of ints. And then I use the list cast. So then this entire thing, this map object, I cast to a list. So I do this all in a single line. All right. So here's this is how I create my input of 45, 0, and 1. So it makes sense in the context of the program. And then for a second, my second line is now I calculate the price in cents. So let's take a look at the first part of the question. So the first one, so I get 100 free minutes and then 80 cents per minute thereafter. So what I do first is let's start at the beginning. So I take the string list we just created. So then I look at the first element. So the first element will be our day minutes. So then I minus 100 because 100 of them are free. Okay. But now I use a function called max. So max only returns the largest of 2 values. Okay. So if this number is smaller than 0, it will just return 0. So then if this is, for example, let's say for 45 minus 100, what do you get? So it's smaller than 0, so it doesn't matter. It just returns 0. So then it ignores this. Unless this value is, the first value is larger than 0, then we will get this value returned. Right. Then we take this entire result. So it's either 0 or if it's a negative number, or it returns a positive number from this range, and then we multiply that by 80. Why 80? Because 80 cents per minute thereafter. Okay, so that is the datetime minutes, this calculation here. The second calculation, we'll look at the second value, the 0 here, and then let's see. So 70 cents per minute. Okay, so this one is very easy. We just take our amount of minutes and we time it by 70, multiply it by 70. And the third last one, weekends, is 50 cents per minute. So also very easy. We take the final value and we time it by 50, because 50 cents per minute. Right, and then we print. So we print the result. We add. Okay, so now I'm just adding more arguments. So what this means is I just add the letter C after my result, and I use a separator. So the separator, if I erase this line, it means it'll print on a next line. So if I do that, and I type in 45, 0, and 1, it'll leave a space, and I do not want the space. So that is why I say the separator will be an empty string. So then it removes that space. There you see, we have 50 cents as the answer, and we can test it with everything. Let's try the second one. 162. Let's run our program again. We say 162, and then the next number is 61, and then the next number is 66, and we get the answer of 12,530 cents. Right. So could you not just do this for the print statement? String answer. Yes, you can do that as well. That is also acceptable. It was just my way of getting there. Right. So I try to do this in as least lines, as little lines of code as possible, but it doesn't matter as long as you get it to work at the end. Then I want you to try use the evaluator. All right. So that is my solution. Christian, I'll take a look for you at the break statement now. Let me first give you the homework. I have the answer here also as the next slide, which I will upload so you can take a look at that. And then your homework will be round 1 of 2018 for the Python Programming Olympiad. All right. So there's 2 questions. Take a look at them and try and upload them to the evaluator as I have shown you in the previous lesson to test if your program is correct. Right, then I will see everybody again next week. I'll upload the homework and the video now, and I hope you have a good weekend. You think you might have another idea, but I think I'm doing something wrong as well. Alright, everyone else, you are welcome to leave. I'll quickly take a look at Christian's answer here. Okay, but thank you everyone, and goodbye. And Christian, do you mind moving over to the Q&A session? Then I will talk to you there.